Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to another one of our developer webinar series with App Certification 101 for Xero Accounting API developers. If you're building to a different API, then there may be some additional requirements that are not covered in today's presentation. If you are unsure at any point, then please do contact your local developer evangelist. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ben Glazier, and I'm one of the developer evangelists here at Xero. I'm based out of the UK, and as you can probably tell by my background, I'm coming to you today from my home office. As a developer evangelist, I am responsible for working with new and existing app partners to showcase the latest and greatest of the Xero API, as well as work with new app partners to get them certified and listed on the Xero App Marketplace. Now, I'm not alone today. I am joined virtually by my colleague, Chris Knight, who's based in Denver. And not only is Chris an all-round good guy, but he's going to be helping me to facilitate today's webinar. Chris will be throwing up a few polls. He'll also be collating any questions you have for a Q&A at the end of today's presentation. The Q&A will last roughly around about 10 to 15 minutes. And any questions that we can't get to today, we will take offline and we'll come back to you in the coming days. Did you want to say hi to everyone, Chris?
Hey, Ben. Thanks for doing this. I'll be in the chat answering questions, and yeah, thanks for everybody for joining.
Excellent. Thanks very much, buddy. So as I said, today we're going to be kicking off with App Certification 101. And the purpose of today's webinar is to get you all comfortable with the Xero App Certification process, the requirements behind that, and how you can get listed on Xero's App Marketplace. Now, before we get stuck into the presentation itself, Chris, I'd love to kick off with a quick poll if we can. So out of today's attendees, I would love to know who's working on an integration with Xero's API that they would like to get certified and listed on the App Marketplace. We'll leave that poll running for a couple of minutes. And what we will do in the meantime is I will go through today's agenda. So the first thing we're going to take a look at today is how you can get started and access the Xero platform, the key need to knows about Xero certification, where you can find additional help and information. And as I said, we're going to round things off with that Q&A at the end. So accessing the Xero platform then. So Xero's API and ecosystem is open, and we welcome as many others to innovate and develop with us as possible. As mentioned at the start of the call, depending on what you build, there may be further requirements that you need to take into account. The first thing you're going to need is a Xero account. Now, what we've done is we've gone ahead and provided you with the links and steps to create your own free Xero account in our Getting Started guide, which you can find on our developer center, developer.xero.com. We'll touch more on that resource a little bit later. Now, whilst you can use a range of Xero trials and Xero demo companies when developing your integration, we'd always recommend that you use the Xero demo company. Main reason for this actually is that it comes populated with a bunch of fictitious data. You can also enable some paid features as well, such as payroll, which is handy if you're developing a payroll integration. But I think the most important thing about the demo company is that that fictitious data can be reset. Now, it will automatically reset every 28 days, but there is also a manual override where you can reset that data should you mess it up during your integration development, which is super important, right? Once you have your Xero account, you're going to want to create your OAuth 2 app. Again, you can create this from within the Developer Center under the My Apps portal. As you can see from the screenshot, there's only a few basic bits of information that we need to know. Of course, we'll need to know your app name. We'll need to know your application URL and a redirect URI. Once you've got that information, please check and read our developer terms and conditions and then save that application. Upon doing so, it will generate a client ID and a client secret, which you can then use to start interacting with Xero's API and Xero organizations. Now, to really power up the development process, we've got a few additional resources that you can use as well. We've got 6 recommended SDKs, all with OAuth 2 support. And these cover all popular server-side languages. So we've got an SDK for Java, .NET, Python, PHP, you name it. If it's popular, we've got an SDK for it. And for those of you who are looking to roll out your own clients, then we also have an open API spec that you can make use of. As well as that, we've got a range of how-to guides for common API use cases, which are going to allow you to kind of quickly iterate on your integration idea, as well as provide you with best practices that deliver that awesome user experience that we're looking for. So what are the need to knows about certification then? Well, I thought I'd start with some top level headlines and figures for you. So Xero currently has just over 2.2 million subscribers, which include accountants and bookkeepers who are all looking for ways to further add value to their and their clients' accounting data. Now, the first place they go to look for these add-ons that will add that value is the Xero App Marketplace, which contains just over 800 certified apps that have all been through this very process. So why do we certify apps then? Well, first and foremost, it ensures the quality of integrations and encourages a beautiful user experience. It should come as no surprise to you that security is front and foremost of our mind, and certification allows us to maintain the security of that sensitive accounting data. We also like to make sure that all our certified apps have appropriate support documentation in place. This way, if anyone runs into any errors or issues with your integration, they can self-serve, keep going, and get up to speed as quickly as possible. Xero is a global platform, so if you'd like your integration to be used in different geographical regions, perhaps maybe Australia, New Zealand, or the US, we'll also check for compatibility in those regional areas. So we'll look at things like currency, we'll look at localized tax rates for you. And we also like to validate your use case to make sure that it complies with our terms and conditions. Now, that last one is super important. It's all too easy to just kind of check a box and bypass terms and conditions, but I do encourage you all to read them in detail. And if you have any concerns or issues about your use case, please do contact us to discuss before building. So why get certified then? What's in it for you? Well, the OAuth 2 apps themselves are restricted to 25 connections, and that limit cannot be increased until certification has been completed. So if you're going to want to connect to more than 25 Xero organizations, you're going to need to complete certification. So there's probably a few of you sitting there right now thinking, well, I don't need to connect to 25 organizations. So are you saying I don't need to get certified? Whilst you don't need to get certified, I would definitely recommend doing it for the host of other benefits that it exposes to you. First and foremost is recognition that your app does exactly what it says and it's been reviewed by us here, the Xero team. That accreditation within our Xero community of accountants and bookkeepers and trusted advisors really is worth its weight in gold. Once you've completed certification, you have the opportunity to join our Xero App Partner Program, which unlocks a range of technical and marketing benefits that you can leverage and make use of. You'll also join part of that growing ecosystem of just over 800 apps, and we give you the opportunity to come and join us at our global event XeroCon, where you can showcase your integration in front of those accountants, bookkeepers, and trusted advisors. And then finally, there's the marketplace itself, which is a fantastic lead generator. So those accountants and bookkeepers, who are predominantly our biggest channel of users and advisors, whenever they're looking for an integration, the first place that they're going to go is over to the Xero App Marketplace. So it really does pay to be certified and listed there. So let's take a look at the certification process itself then. What do you need to do to get certified? We'll go through each of the 7 steps at a high level. And whilst we're going through these, I will try and give you some tips and tricks along the way on how you can speed up this process and kind of get ahead of the game. The step 1 of the process then, hopefully should come as no surprise, but you're going to need to build an integration. As we touched on at the start of the presentation, the Xero API is open, and an OAuth 2 app will allow you to get started right away and connect to 25 organizations right out of the box. We've got a detailed getting started guide, which will walk you through the steps of creating that Xero account, creating your OAuth 2 app, but also some guides on how you can get up and running with Xero's API using our Postman collection. And of course, we've got those SDKs to give you a real head start. When you're building your integration, I would encourage you to build that alongside our certification checkpoints. Certification checkpoints can be found within our Developer Center under our How-To section. And the certification checkpoints really are the foundation of our review process, and it's what we look for when reviewing integrations. There are some mandatory checkpoints that are required by all integrations. There are some required checkpoints for those of you that are retrieving data through the API, and there's required checkpoints for those that are posting data back to Xero organizations. please make sure that your integration complies to all of those that are applicable to you. This is not only going to make sure that you have an awesome integration and kind of the best one possible, but of course, it's really going to speed up that review process for you and make sure things run as smoothly as possible too. In addition to those required checkpoints, we also have some preferred user experiences, which you should definitely take note of. Now, whilst these aren't required, they will set your integration apart from the rest, which I guess is crucial when you're joining an app marketplace, an ecosystem of just over 800 apps. You're going to want to do what you can to provide the best user experience, separate yourself from the competition, and kind of keep on the heels of those market-leading competitors. Finally, we've got a range of how-to guides, which we have touched upon, and you can kind of use those to leverage and build upon. The how-to guides will cover basic accounting principles, and they will also show you how the result looks within Xero's UI, which is really handy if you're not familiar with Xero at all. But most importantly, the how-to guides include best practice processes based upon our knowledge of working with those 800 plus certified apps. Once you've built your integration, you'll be able to move on to step 2. And you're going to want to get customers to try that integration. So once you've built it and gone through that internal alpha testing, you're going to want to validate the Xero integration in the real world by getting a few trusted customers to start using it. You're going to need at least 3 beta users who've connected to your app within the last 30 days to move on to step number 3. And for those of you who are building a brand new product and don't have any customers, then why not leverage the Xero community? Within the Xero community, we have a feature requests discussion thread, and use that to engage with existing Xero customers about your product and of course acquire some beta users along the way. That particular thread can actually be quite handy for looking at what gaps there are within the Xero product itself and what you could potentially build an integration to solve such a problem. Once you've got those beta customers on board, you can move forward to step number 3 in our process, which is the formal review of your integration. To do this, you're going to need to complete our app partner request form, which can be found on the Developer Center under the Partner tab. For those of you who've kind of got a pen and paper handy, you can jot down the URL that you see on the screen, but it really is quite easy to find. We'll ask you some basic information about yourself, contact details, also your website. That will allow us to go and have a little look at your product and just understand more about your solution and your feature set before we get back in touch. Once we've reviewed that, we'll come back to you and we will ask for a few bits of information. The first thing that we're going to want to carry out a review is a set of login credentials to a test account on your application. We'll need some instructions on how we can authenticate your app to Xero and of course test out each of those API calls that you've built into your integration. We'll need some seeded test data in that test account, or at least some steps on how we can create it ourselves. And of course, we want to know the expected outcomes and goals of the customers who are using the integration. Now, all of these steps are best provided to us by way of a Google Doc or a PDF, along with some screenshots, or of course, you could record a short video which will demo your integration to us. And this is tip number 1, I guess. And the reason why I'm calling this out now is so that you can get ahead of the process and you can prepare all of this in advance. That way, once you've completed the app partner request, it's all there ready to go and we can get up and running with the review right away. When we come to do the review, we will be testing the integration from the perspective of the customer, looking at the ideal and best user experience, using our certification checkpoints as the foundation. Now, our feedback will not be limited to those points. We'll also draw on our own experience of Xero, existing integrations that are already in the app marketplace, and of course, features that we know that our customers really value. We'll track all of our feedback within a Google Doc, which we share with you at the end of the review, along with any points that will need to be addressed before we can move to the next step. Once all outstanding issues have been addressed and resolved, we can move on to the next step, step 4 in our process, which is the formal beta feedback stage. And the reason why we have this is, well, beta feedback, it kind of means that we can iron out any problems before we list you in the Xero App Marketplace. We found over the years, actually, that the complexity of real financial accounting data will often expose bugs that haven't been thought of during the development cycle, or sometimes missed within our own review, because ultimately we're not those small business unit users who use your application on a daily basis. We're very much dealing with kind of perfect tests, perfect scenarios, and perfect data. So beta should hopefully expose that for us. For the beta feedback step, you're going to need at least 5 active users in the past 30 days that each are associated with their own Xero subscription. We'll send out a simple survey to these customers on your behalf, just to ensure the quality of your integration. And what we may do is request you to make some changes based upon their feedback if necessary. In parallel to the beta survey, we'll also look at our API logs to see how your integration is performing for this set of beta customers. But don't worry, we do know that errors happen from time to time, so we're not expecting to see perfect logs. But if we do see any errors, then what we're really looking for is kind of peace of mind that they're handled well, the customers are able to resolve, and there's not continual issues throughout the logs. We also check that you're using the API and the calls in the most efficient way, staying within our API limits, and using some of the built-in efficiencies such as paging or modified since parameters. Once we're happy with the beta feedback stage, we move on to step number 5 in our process, which is for you to create your support documentation and landing page. I've included a couple of screenshots here from one of our existing app partners, Approval Max, because they do a particularly good job at both their support page, which is at the back, and their landing page, which is the screenshot you can see front and center. So the support documentation for your integration should be the first place that our mutual users go to seek help about your app. Now, whilst each integration is unique, we do have a support documentation requirements which outline the absolute minimum that your page should include. Your support documentation should be publicly accessible because we will need to link to that and pass customers over to it should they run into any errors or issues. And kind of goes without saying, but it should also be updated in line with any changes to your product or integration. The landing page itself is actually an overview of the integration that you've built and the partnership between your product and Xero. This would be the page that we link to from your App Marketplace listing for users to go and find and understand more about your product and your feature set. Having that landing page that's dedicated for Xero users is really important to deliver the best user experience. Just like the support page, we do have some requirements around this, and to kind of give you a leg up and make sure that you meet those, we actually have a code template that you can make use of to make this step even easier. That code template is housed on GitHub and again can be found through our developer center, developer.xero.com. And again, kind of calling this one out early, this is a top tip for you. So whilst this is step 5 in our process, you can actually start work on these pages as soon as you've developed an integration. And I would definitely recommend doing that as soon as possible. Reason being is that you may need to lean on other areas of your business to get these pages live. So perhaps maybe the marketing team or a front-end web dev team to actually launch the page itself. So the sooner you can start work on these, the better. The absolute latest that you're going to want to start work on this is when you provide us details of your beta customers for survey. But yeah, if you can start work on that as soon as possible, that would be fantastic. Once they've been reviewed and approved, then it is time to get your Xero integration in the Xero App Marketplace. We will let you know how you can submit this information to us as soon as that beta step is complete. And we just collect some basic information from you. So we'll collect some basic copy, some purchase URLs, and some your logo as an absolute minimum. But if you really want to make your marketplace listing pop, then you're going to want to take some great quality screenshots of your integration and produce an overview video of your integration. Now, if you put that video on YouTube, Vimeo, or Brightcove, then what we can do is we can actually use that on your app marketplace listing, and we can create something very similar to Practice Ignition that you can see here within this screenshot. Once your app marketplace listing is live, you can, through the Developer Center and the My Apps portal, go onto the Marketplace tab and make changes if you want to edit the listing. If you have any questions or want to be listed in multiple regions at a later date, then you'll just need to let us know. Once you are live, we'd encourage you to promote that marketplace listing far and wide. So get on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, get some blogs out there as well, just letting people know that you've completed certification, you're live on Xero's App Marketplace. We will, of course, send out a tweet to all of our followers on our Xero API Twitter channel, and we'll let Xeros know of your launch internally too. If you're creating any press releases, then please make sure you reference our Xero partner brand guidelines when using any of our brand features. And make sure that you're always using the Xero connected app logo. It's a slightly different logo to the standard Xero blue one that you see. You've gone through certification, you've done the hard work, you've earned that logo, so please wear that as kind of a badge of honor. And any press releases, just email them over to press@xero.com for sign off just before you send those out. Now, at this stage of the process, we would consider you certified, and we will increase the app connection limit of your OAuth 2 app from 25 connections to 999. There might be a few of you wondering why that is not unlimited. And the reason why is step 7 in our process. Before we can lift that connection limit any higher than 999, you will need to meet our global security standards. Protecting our community's data and privacy is a responsibility that we take very seriously at Xero. And before you can connect to more than 1,000 organizations or use any of our practice APIs, you will need to complete a security self-assessment. Until then, your connection numbers will be capped at 999, and you will not have access to Xero Practice Manager or Xero HQ APIs. We'll share the self-assessment with you once you reach 800 connections or whenever you request access to the Xero Practice Manager or Xero HQ API. So where can you go for additional help and information along the way then? Well, we've mentioned it a few times throughout this webinar, but the first place you're going to want to check out is our Developer Center, which can be found at developer.xero.com. The Developer Center is packed with tons of useful information, which I possibly can't do justice in such a short space of time. But at a high level, it includes details of all of our publicly available APIs and their endpoints, as well as some request and response examples that you can take a good look at. On the Developer Center, we've also got those how-to guides for the common integration types that we've already spoken about. So if you're building a CRM integration, point of sale, payroll, go and check out those how-to guides first of all, because that will really kind of springboard your development process. Under those how-to guides, we've got our certification checkpoints, which, as we've already discussed, you should constantly refer to throughout that, at least that initial development cycle. And that just makes sure that you hit the ground running once it comes to the review stage of the process. Developer Center is also where we have our SDKs and that open API spec too. Alongside the Developer Center, we have a dedicated dev blog, which is hosted on Medium. And it's where we publish regular posts on kind of all things Xero API. So there's some tutorial stuff on there. There's also some feature release and some articles that are just for fun. Alongside the blog, we've got our Xero Developer YouTube channel, which you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. Again, predominantly this is for tutorials, but we also have some fun sections on there. One that you should definitely look to check out is the Community Corner section, where Developer Evangelists, just like myself, will take some frequently asked questions from you, the developer community, and answer them through a video format. So yeah, really good to check out if you've not seen those before. Just like our Xero business community, we have a dedicated developer forums where you can go and speak to other like-minded Xero developers and ask any questions that you have about the API. Our support team will often jump in there too and answer any frequently asked questions. Finally, we have what's hot with the Xero API and any new requirements that you need to be aware of to keep you certified. As well as all of our great content on the Developer Center, we have a globally distributed developer evangelist team to not only carry out the certification, but to be on hand with any technical questions that you have regarding the Xero API. So in the Northern Hemisphere, you've got me, you've also got Chris and Brett, who are based out of Denver, and you've got Sid, who leads up the developer evangelist team based out of San Francisco. In the Southern Hemisphere, we've got Grace in Auckland, and we've got Jenks and Jordan in Melbourne. So wherever you are in the world, whatever time zone, we have got you covered around the clock. As well as the developer evangelist team, we also have a dedicated API support team covering both the Northern and Southern Hemisphere. They're great to get in touch with if you've got any quick fire questions about the API. If you want to know whether a particular endpoint supports a particular feature, then please get in touch with them. They're really good for those quick fire questions. You can contact the API support team on api@xero.com. So that concludes today's webinar of App Certification 101. And just before we jump into the Q&A, Chris, I'd like us just to send out one final poll just to see if everyone who's attended today has learned enough about the certification process that they can get started. So if you'd like to send out that poll, we'll leave that up in the background. And Chris, I'd love to know if we've had any questions come through for Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Poll's running now, and we've got a couple of good questions I'd love to run through.
Excellent.
So first one from Andrew Kaywood. He was
Mhm.
asking, may I use the Xero Connected App badge on my landing page before the app has been certified?
Yeah, so as long as you've engaged in the certification process with Developer Evangelist and you're moving towards certification, then you are able to use the co-branding to build your landing page. If you fall out of the certification process at any point in time, then we would require you to remove that Xero branding that's been associated with your app. Hopefully that answers your question, Andrew.
Yeah, and Andrew actually had another great question. He was asking, if there's a limit to the 25 connections before the app is certified, where can I see how many connections there are currently?
Yeah, so great question again, Andrew. So at the moment, we don't have a dashboard which outlines all of the active connections that are kind of associated with your app. With the token sets that you've got stored for your users that you've got connected, you'll be able to hit the connections endpoint for each token to get an accurate number of the connections per token. And in addition to that, there is a history tab in the My Apps dashboard that shows you the API traffic in kind of the last 30 days. But if you are unsure, if there's any ambiguity whatsoever, then get in touch with your local developer evangelist and we'll quickly check our backend logs and we'll be able to tell you how many people are connected and how much of that 25 you're using up.
All right,
Thanks,
thanks,
Andrew.
Ben. And we had one last question from Sunil.
Yeah, sure.
And they were asking, how long can I expect the whole certification process to take?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, Sunil, and it's one we get all the time. It really is, how long is a piece of string? And it does depend on kind of how prepared and how ready you are, which is why we do this webinar, so that you can understand all the steps of the process and you can make sure that you hit each of those requirements. So if you've got a really good integration that's been built alongside those certification checkpoints and you've got a good set of beta customers that are proactive and can respond to our survey quickly, there's no reason why you can't complete this process within kind of 1 to 3 months. But of course, there is a lot of ownership on that review stage. So once we do the review, if we do find any issues, we'll obviously let you know about, and it's how long it takes you to resolve those issues and get back to us. So yeah, as long as you build a solid integration in line with those certification checkpoints, no reason you can't complete this within kind of 1 to 3 months.
Great, and we just got a question come in from Deepak. And Deepak was asking, after we submit the application, how long does it take Xero to come back to us?
So once you submit the application, I assume we're talking about the app partner request. Once that comes through, we'll get back to you within kind of 1 to 3 days, and that will start the ball rolling. And as I said, we're going to be requesting that information about getting the test account and that seeded test data, some steps on how to test your integration. So if you can have all that ready, means that when we come back to you within that 1 to 3 day period, we can get up and running with the review as quickly as possible.
That about wraps Q&A. We had a few questions asking if the recording is going to be available, and that will be sent out as a downloadable link by tomorrow.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Chris. So thanks everyone for listening to today's webinar. Just throw up this final slide. My name's Ben Glazier. We've got some contact information for myself there, as well as some details on how you can get in touch with us in general. If you do have any questions, then please reach out to us on api@xero.com. And we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.